Oh, there you go. We're live streaming by the look of it. So that's cool. So welcome to another Casual Chat Saturday. So I'm loving this. This is the third one I've done. It is pretty darn awesome. So yeah, it looks like we're live streaming, so that's cool. So yeah, tonight we're talking to Kristan Kershaw, who is a dear friend of mine and is also a holistic health coach. So we're going to go for however long. It could be 2 hours.
Knowing us.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Now I'm just going to check the page because we may have live people. So I'm just going to double. I'll do it on my laptop because lovely phone. I've got too much on there. I've got to delete stuff. It won't let me do anything.
Gotta love that.
Oh, you do, don't you? Yep. Beautiful. Yep, looks like it's all good. So I'm just going to put that on. We're going to put. It could be. Yep, there we go. Check just the page. Oh, be quiet. Silly thing. Be quiet.
YouTube.
I love it. Yeah, muting. Yeah, I don't want to hear myself twice.
It's so funny because as soon as we started, I'm like, oh, mute Facebook because I can, expect ding, ding.
Because, I have shared this a bit, so, people might come up live. So there is a delay when you live share it to Facebook, there's a delay. So, yeah. So anyway, welcome. So let's get started. So it's just like a casual chat between two people. So tell me about yourself and what you actually do.
So I'm a health coach that helps people to understand what their minerals have got to do with how they feel, whether it's how much energy they've got, whether it's that they have certain symptoms and conditions which mean that they can't live their life to their fullest. And then I help them to connect how those work together and then what we can do about it from a point of supporting the minerals in their body to be more functional, what they've already got. So people might be low in iron, or they might have hormones that are out of balance, or digestive problems and food intolerances, which is where I actually began. People who get migraines, that was also me for 25 plus years. I got very frequent migraines and now I no longer get them, maybe 2 or 3 a year.
Wow.
So I've really tuned in with also people understanding how the stress impacts, because when a body is stressed, it loses minerals and we don't metabolize things in the same way. And most of us don't realize that when we've got stress, that actually has a big impact on our physiology. So that's a big part of what I do with my clients, is help them to understand how all that's connected, because most of us don't have that awareness. So how it all works.
Wow. So you just hinted at having migraines, and that's sort of how you started. Was there any other reasons that you started doing this?
Yep. So I've got 3, well, I was going to say little people, but actually 2 of them are one of them's taller than me and one of them's on his way there. So I have twins who are 13 and a little one who is about to turn 7 in 10 days from now. Wow. And when the little one was a baby, she was really, really unwell. So she projectile vomited everywhere. She didn't sleep because she was in so much pain. And we found that the food I was eating was going through my breast milk into cause her reactions. So I went on a really strict elimination diet. Tell you, 15 foods, there's only so many different ways that you can prepare that many ingredients. And along the way, that helped her, but that helped me to realize more foods. I'd known for years that things like oranges and bananas, if I had anything with a trace of those in them, and mangoes was another big one, I would get a migraine 24 hours after I ate it. So it was pretty cool because I could go, right, I've got a migraine. It's 1 p.m. What did I eat at lunch yesterday? And I could work it backwards because it literally was 24 hours within 5 minutes of 24 hours.
Wow.
Whatever was going on in my circadian rhythm at that point. And so a lot of those reactions started to peel back as I went on this elimination diet. But clearly living off so few things is not sustainable. And we didn't want my daughter to live off that either. We went to all the specialists. She was diagnosed with a thing called eosinophilic esophagitis. I still remember when the pediatrician said that and goes, oh yeah, and I think your son's got it too. I was like, can you write that down? And I had a background in science and knew the physiology side of it. So I'm like, okay, esophagitis, something with the esophagus. Basically all it is an allergic reaction in the throat to something that you're eating or you're exposed to. So for a breastfed baby, that means me, and what I ate. So that was a catalyst to me going more and more restricted in what foods I ate. But we went to gastroenterologists and we went to allergists, and they basically said, well, we're not sure that it is that. The gastroenterologist on one hand said, no, I don't think it is. And then on the other said, well, just keep feeding her more foods that make her react and then come back to me and I'll help you fix her. And I'm like, no. By that stage, I had her pretty good. She was not reacting anywhere near as much. I was still really restricted, but she was okay compared to where she'd been. And I went, there's got to be a better way. And so that's when I started to really start digging for ways to heal, and stumbled onto magnesium first, and the rest is kind of history. That was 2013. So that's well over 6 years ago that I started that process of very slowly adding magnesium. And it's so much more than just magnesium, but it's a fantastic way that we started. And now she can eat pretty much anything. We keep her off gluten because we think she's a celiac, but other than that, and they told us that literally by the time she started school, which was the beginning of 2018, that she would be maybe have 40 or 50 foods, because she's that child that just has multiple food protein intolerances, but they were severe intolerances, not just a little bit won't hurt. It could have one little mouthful of food could have her reacting for 3 weeks. So she was really sensitive. So anyway, for her to then start school with pretty much no food reactions, again, except for us being mindful of the wheat. Now, if we have food that's prepared in a common area, she doesn't react to that. Whereas before, if she touched Play-Doh, sometimes she would react. So it's just a completely different world.
Wow. It's incredible, isn't it?
I almost have to pinch myself now to go, was that really our life? Because it's just we've come so far. The whole family has had so many benefits. And that's what started me, because as I was going on the journey, I started to help other people and say, hey, you might want to learn about this, or have a consult with the guy that I had a consult with. And that started to help more. And I kept learning, and they kept coming to me going, can you explain this for me?
Yeah.
And so I formalized it a few years ago and trained in it, and have been building my knowledge and skills ever since. So.
Wow. And for me, coming from the medical field, like that's what I used to do. And it's like, hang on, we could do so much. Like we really could. We could do so much.
And it doesn't have to be rocket science.
No.
It's
hello,
not.
Hello, Mary.
There's so much that if we want to go into the biochemistry, absolutely, that's complicated. But the essence of it is actually really core values of going back to simpler foods, getting the histamine levels down in the body for someone like my daughter especially, but our family. And, I too can eat whatever now. I don't get migraines from every day. I can enjoy a banana and go, yes, I'm not going to get sick from this. But for a while I had the psychological aspect to deal with that, because I'm like, bananas make me. And then I'm like, no, actually they don't.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So.
Yeah. Wow. This is just interesting. I'm loving this. It's like, oh. Yeah, I do need to chat to you.
So many people around the world live in this permanently. Like, what blew me away at the time when I was living in this was I was new to it from a point of view. I'd had food intolerances and reactions for much of my life, and I knew that they were getting worse, especially after I had the twins. And then when I had an ectopic pregnancy the year before my youngest, and that my body just took such a big hit after that. I was so sick. And then after she came, I was more and more sensitive, and I just couldn't do things the way. And I just went, well, I'm just, it's just because I'm a mum. It's just because of my genes. It's just, well, how do I suddenly now not get those reactions? I can go, for a while I was getting migraines after having gone for a 5K jog. And I haven't built myself back up to consistently running the whole 5Ks now. But I could go and walk 6 or 10Ks and some of it jog it, and I don't get that. And that's without training for it. Like, I physically can do so much more. And yeah, I might be a little bit tired, but no fallout, no migraines, my muscles don't get particularly sore. And there's a whole lot of added bonuses. Like, I was talking with a client yesterday. She said, I went to the beach for a week. I put one lot of sunscreen on in the morning and I didn't burn at all. And she and I share a very white factor where we tend to, I was always the lobster kid, and my pink shirt is making me look nice and lobster. I'm really very white. And I can literally go to the beach and put no sunscreen on, or just put some coconut oil or something, because again, I don't really want to develop skin cancers and all the rest either, but I don't burn. I don't get that. So there's all sorts of things where my body is self-regulating so much better.
Wow, this is so interesting because I mean, there's so many people out there that go, well, you know, I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't do this. But when you really go into it, yes, you can. You just need to look at what's actually happening.
And it feels like it's going to take forever. It feels like there's so much that you need to do, that you have to do. And the science factor, if people are not scientifically orientated, can be a little bit confusing, or just even just because it's foreign, you just look at it and go, that's too hard. But again, if you calm the brain for a minute and go, hang on, there's actually some really good tools to help step into it one thing at a time, introduce that. I literally started with 4 sprays of magnesium on my feet before bed, did that for a week. The next week I did 6 sprays. The next week I did 8 sprays. And I literally spent 6 months going up like that, because we were so in the something's going to cause a reaction. The mindset was so stressed out. I couldn't actually handle introducing anything else for that time. But that meant that within 3 weeks, she started to sleep at night. She started to react less to environmental things. And I thought, how can this be possible? But it just continued.
So magnesium is really good to help with sleeping, is it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Children or adults, things like Epsom salt baths, or if people can't do a bath, they can do a foot soak. It's a fantastic way. And a little trick is that you can put some bicarb soda, so about half the amount of magnesium. So let's say you put 2 cups of magnesium in a bath. If you put a cup of bicarb soda in, and then you can put a little sprinkle of borax in, believe it or not. Most of us know borax for the cleaning factor and the big toxic warnings and stuff. Just FYI, borax is actually just a mineral salt. It's not toxic. If you are sensible with it, if you go and eat a whole lot of it, yeah, okay, you can make yourself sick, but you actually need to eat more of it than you would table salt to make yourself toxically sick. So who's going to go and eat either of them in that volume anyway? Let's be real. But are there toxic warnings all over table salt for all of the stuff that they do to it? No. So anyway, a little sprinkle of that, because boron and bicarb, the bicarbonate factor of bicarb soda, are actually cofactors of magnesium. So they help the magnesium to do their job.
Oh, yeah, and that's what I find really fascinating about all our minerals and everything, is that you do actually have to combine it with other things for the body to absorb it properly. Because a lot of people say, oh, I'll just take iron tablets, but you need other things with it though, don't you?
Well, and iron is best obtained from food. All of the tablets are out there, or even extracts from plants or whatever. They don't, for the most part, give you the parts that you need. And I'm yet to come across someone, and I've seen some people with significant apparent anemia. It's that the iron is not available to the body. There's a lack in terminology in a lot of fields where they say, well, it's a deficiency. Actually, it's a lack of bioavailable iron and functional iron that's the problem. And so if we introduce a thing called bioavailable copper, we get the copper in the body functional. There's a particular enzyme in the body which actually makes the iron be functional. And so we don't need to add more iron to our systems. Again, if someone's been in a car accident or had a massive situation of major blood loss, absolutely. And sometimes people need blood transfusions and all that sort of thing. There's emergency healthcare, absolutely. But the majority of people, if they got their bioavailable copper up, then, and I've seen some amazing changes in people where they've all their life had really low hemoglobin. Ferritin is a whole different story, which I can sidetrack to shortly, but hemoglobin is one that's more reliable for giving a bit of an indication, because something like 70% of our iron is actually in a hemoglobin. And so people have consistently been low throughout their life, and then it just comes up naturally. And even for me, I started doing blood donations back 3 years ago, and my first donation, my hemoglobin was 123. Well, when we got to, when was it, April, I think, or July donation, it was sitting at 150 for me. And my recent one was 138. And that's just happened by itself. That's not me taking any iron. That's with me eating food. So
wow,
it's a big, and I've not tested low. I took plenty of iron when I was pregnant with my twins, much to their detriment, unfortunately. But that's, again, a whole different story. A lot of the time people get told that their ferritin is low. So, hey, take some iron, but ferritin is about the worst marker that's possible for determining where your iron stores are. It's actually meant to be inside the cell, not in the blood. So if we're starting to measure ferritin in the blood, that's a sign of liver problems, liver pathophysiology, as it's called. I'm sure you're very familiar with that term. But yeah, it actually means that
Wow.
the body is struggling to recycle things and that it's getting released in the blood. So we're better off keeping the ferritin inside the cells, doing its job in there, and letting the hemoglobin do its transporting work, and then you're going to feel much better.
Wow, this is fascinating. So I've got another question. So what foods are best for doing their iron, like actually getting your iron?
Liver is one of the best, beef liver especially. And yeah, I know, trust me. I'll tell you a funny story about that in a moment. Grass-fed beef liver is one of the best. I've used lamb liver as a bit of a backup rather. But there are capsules for those who are not so inclined to consume the liver. And when I had my first consult, so this is a funny story. When I had my first consult with my now colleague Morley, but at the time I booked in for a consult, during it he went, well, you really need to get liver into you because it'll help you and your daughter and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, liver. Yeah, I'll get to that. They did the same for EFT, actually. I have to say they were the two main recommendations that I didn't integrate in for far too long. So that was the beginning of 2014, and it took until the middle of June. It was like July 2016, so 2.5 almost years. And then I started, and our energy just increased. My husband and I couldn't believe it. Even just introducing one liver capsule, it makes such a big difference because it gives us retinol, it gives us B, retinol is vitamin A, it gives us B vitamins, it gives us this bioavailable copper, and it helps us to utilize what's already in our body in other ways. So it was, I'm the first to go, okay, I did not like the concept of it. And the funniest bit is when I told my husband, he's like, you will never feed me liver. I will divorce you. And he wasn't kidding. And we've got a really pretty solid, we've been through a lot together. We've been together 20 years. We've got a pretty solid sort of bond. Yeah, no, he was determined that he was going to divorce me if I fed him that. Oh, look, there's a little person.
Sorry to interrupt, but
Hello.
Kath was eating my mincy.
Oh, well, put it up on the bench and we'll discuss it later. That might be her dinner. We have a puppy in the house.
I know, I know.
It's a baby puppy.
She's
Oh, a baby puppy.
now. Say hi, Darlene. Hi, everybody.
Hello. Everybody on Facebook land. Marion, there's Marion.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I was very sorry that I had to interrupt you.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, well, liver reminds me of growing up because my uncle and they used to eat it all the time. And I was like, yeah, no, no. I could do capsules, but definitely not eating. No.
That's how we started. So the Mincy that she was just referring to, when she was very small and again reacted to things, what I would do is cook up all the different veggies that she could tolerate, which was mainly choco and swede, and a little bit of bok choy and celery with thyme. I just minced all of that up, like pureed it in a Thermomix and then cooked lamb meat above it and then combined it to make mincy because we couldn't tolerate any other meat except lamb. It was the only one. It's one of the lowest allergen type meats. And what I didn't realize is it's also naturally fatty and it's got retinol in it as well. And it's not a bad source for the copper and that sort of thing. So we've probably helped the whole thing because lamb, out of all of the meats, it's actually more nourishing than chicken and to an extent beef as well, depending, again, beef and different animals have benefit for those who choose to eat them. If people choose not to, well, that's their prerogative and I'm cool with that. But for the healing on the level that I'm talking about, having some in the regular routine has some level of benefit. Yeah. Anyway, with time, we've added more and more veggies because she doesn't react to things anymore, but she still relies on that mincy. What I started to do a couple of months ago, the rest of the family and not quite aware of, and maybe hoping that my husband doesn't ever see this live, is that there's 10% liver added to that mince. And so every time she eats it, she's getting liver and she doesn't know. So, oh, she done. And the whole family really likes all the different sort of, bolognese and tacos and whatever else that we make with that.
Wow. So do you help people actually with the recipes and that as well?
Well, I'm just about to start a new course actually, and this is the sort of thing that I really want to share in it. I do to an extent drip feed a little bit recipe wise. I haven't been massively focused on it in recent times because I tend to be giving people other direction, but I'll give them guidance on what ingredients have worked for us and ways to do it and that sort of thing. In a intermediate past life, in not original work, but while that little one was little, I used to be a Thermomix consultant, and I would often share recipes, and I've got gluten-free bread recipes and that sort of thing. So if it comes up, I definitely do share recipes, but I'm hoping in the course to do a whole 2-week period where I'm talking about different ways to get extra nutrients into the body and that sort of thing. I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a dietitian and all that, but from a mum's point of view of how to help us nourish our brains and bodies, there's some things that we can do that don't have to be hard, because a lot of the time we just don't know of it. And once we know, we go, oh, well, I can swap that for that, or I can add this in. But grass-fed butter is another great way to get extra retinol or that vitamin A into our diet. So swap to a grass-fed, ideally organic option, and you may just improve your health a little bit more.
So where do you get that from? Because I love butter. Like, I've grown up and I won't have margarine or anything like that. I'm a butter girl.
Yep.
So where do you get that one from then?
You can actually get a pretty good organic salted butter from Aldi, and you just need, there's a Ballantine branded one, I think at Woolies. It's in a roll rather than a block. It's about yay-ish big, and I think there's a blue and a red wrapper, obviously one for salted and one unsalted, and that's a good organic one. The other one that I default to at times is Westgold. I'm pretty sure that's the New Zealand brand of butter, because generally speaking, the cows are pretty much solidly fed on grass, because New Zealand's got so much more prolific grass sort of areas compared to what we do, especially this time. But getting in touch with where people can, clearly not everyone's got the capacity to, but where you can, connecting with local farms is one of the best things that you can do. So if you're going to use cream, try and get cream from farmers where it's unhomogenized. You won't generally get non-pasteurized stuff these days, but ideally that would be what we would get if we could, type thing. But getting the minimally processed, you don't want the additives, you don't want the thickness, just like we get Mullaney cream here, and it's amazing. It is so thick. There's no thickeners added. It's just like the buttercream proportion. Oh, sorry, the cream factor versus the filler factor. It's not runny. And you get the thickened stuff, and it's like, it's not really thickened, and it's kind of, what else have you added?
Yeah.
Make it go further to make it more cost effective.
Yeah, I grew up in Tasmania, and Marion was just saying, the butter's from New Zealand. And I grew up in Tasmania, and we used to get, that's when you could actually buy the milk directly from the farmer. And man, did we fight over that cream.
Yep. Even my husband's sort of family, where he would go out to his grandparents' farm, and I'm sure he remembers, getting cream, fresh cream, and milking the cows and getting it. We're not that old, like, it's not, this is the saddest thing, right? It's not that long ago that we could get these nutrients. And in some states of Australia, Cleopatra's milk is tainted with bittering agents, but so you can't drink it, because for the bath, right? Cleopatra's bath milk is for baths. It's not for consumption. So if people want raw milk, then it may be available for maybe they make body products. You make soaps, don't you, darling?
Yes, I do.
So, maybe that's one. I mean, it's nothing like getting it directly from the farm, clearly, but it's an option from health food stores anyway. So butter is, again, the epitome of a quick way to swap. If people are still using margarine, please do some research on the benefits of real stuff, not margarine. And secondly, if you can aim for the grass-fed stuff, where possible, try and support Australian farmers, of course. But sometimes, for a long time, I used Kerrygold butter until I thought about it and read some information and went, well, I could just get New Zealand butter as a close second best, and where I can, I'll use the Australian stuff too.
Yeah, Australian's good stuff. Yeah, we don't really want to support New Zealand.
Sorry to the New Zealanders who are watching this right now or later.
Anyone watching knows that Australia and New Zealand have that beautiful relationship.
Yep.
Now, I know that you've actually got, and we were talking about migraines before, I know that you've got a really good little recipe to help people Oh, someone's joined. Cool.
Melissa.
Yeah.
Melissa's from New Zealand too, so
Oh,
tune in for that part. Hi, Mel.
You know we love New Zealand.
I have to quietly whisper here, I'm an Australian that happened to be in New Zealand when I was born too, so
Oh,
I have some level of...
there was something.
I was only there 2.5 years. Like, I don't know, I can fly both ways with the style of healthcare and everything in New Zealand. I think there's many aspects to which I'd actually be quite happy to reside there. But anyway, that is a very different discussion.
So no, I don't really want to go into that either.
No.
Former medical person. And I love saying former. So exciting. Yeah, anyway, back to what we're talking about.
A lovely little trick for migraines.
Yes, and I love this, and I'll get you to share it in the comments when we've all finished, is I know, so when people are starting to get like a headache or something, they could actually take this, and it's good to actually have it every day as well.
Yeah, so there's 2 different ways you can, well, there's many variations, but keeping it simple, if you start to get a migraine, start to get a headache, even with dizziness and vertigo and just that kind of, and those who have experienced it will know what I mean, it's kind of that blah feeling where you're just feeling a bit off and your balance may not be quite right and you're just feeling not quite, it's sort of that perception is a bit off and you're just not feeling. So if you get a pinch of cream of tartar, and I'm talking like a little pinch, doesn't need to be a massive amount, and you pop it under your tongue and let it dissolve. And so if you put it right under there, you don't have any taste buds, so you don't taste it. With holding it there for a few seconds, you'll start to feel it or taste it on the sides of your tongue. And it's a little bit tart, but it's nothing too bad. And it'll be gone in a few seconds anyway as it dissolves. But that sublingual delivery means that that actually goes into your bloodstream quite quickly. And helps to give you some relief, because a lot of the time when you're feeling that way, you've got an electrolyte imbalance, particularly with regards to potassium. Now, if you had a blood test at that exact moment, it may not even show up, but that little bit, and again, it's a really small amount, but that little bit can actually give you some temporary relief of symptoms and help you to continue about your day. So it's a really nice little sort of first aid almost thing, just to help. Again, it's symptom relief rather than solving the underlying issue. If you, there's a lovely drink called the Adrenal Cocktail, and yeah, I'll share a link in the comments after we're done. And that's, the Adrenal Cocktail is about half a cup of orange juice. And yes, there are some variations. I didn't start off with orange juice because it was my like kryptonite at the time. I'm like, are you kidding? I'm not touching that stuff. But orange juice is the base recipe, half a cup, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I use Celtic, or there's a great Ancient Lakes Minerals product that you can get that's a West Australian salt. So just a basic salt, and then 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. And that mixed together, and I find it really refreshing if you put some cold soda water in. But again, I like that kind of crisp coldness and that bubbly thing. You don't have to. You could just use general cold water. You could just have it. Some people like it as a shot, whatever. But if you do that and you do it once, maybe twice a day, depending. I feel best when I have it twice a day. And sometimes, like on days when I donate blood, I'll have 3 or 4 because it helps to replenish. Or if I've gone for a big walk or a run or whatever, it helps to replenish what I've sweated out and what I may have lost through other things if I'm under a lot of pressure or stress or working hard, whatever. And it makes such a big difference. The vitamin C that's in it helps our adrenal glands, and then the electrolytes, the adrenals, in their management of the fight or flight response in the body. We need the sodium and we need the potassium. Heaps of us have been conditioned over time that salt is bad.
Yes.
And it's a huge hurdle mentally for most of us. We'll look at it and go, wow, that's a lot of salt, isn't it? Again, if you have a lot of salt in your diet and you don't like that drink, well, maybe you want to cut the salt down a bit and try it with it a bit adjusted. But I'd encourage you at least sometimes to try it with the full strength. It doesn't taste like super salty orange juice to the majority of people, and that's because our body often needs it, and you'll start to potentially crave the drink as well as a regular occurrence. And if you miss it, you'll be like, oh, I'm missing that. So but what we tend to find is those who have especially a whole food diet focus, and I'm not saying that we're perfect, I'll be the first to say we're far from perfect on every single thing that goes in our mouth as far as being handmade. It used to be all, but in this day we're super busy. So there are some things which remotely come out of a packet or we might cheat on, but we we make the majority, especially of our main meals and lunches and that sort of thing, from scratch. You don't get enough salt just by doing that. We actually need to add a fair bit of salt. Our ancestors ate so much salt, way more than what the RDI is and all that sort of jazz. And they didn't necessarily all have high blood pressure or anything else that people really fear with the salt, but we actually need it to help regulate our cells, because both sodium and potassium, they're involved in the regulation of all sorts of things, nutrients in and out of the cell, including the copper that I was talking about before, including where water moves and hydration and that sort of thing. But if we don't have enough potassium, especially, which is what I see over and over again, and that's the cream of tartar bit, as well as a little bit from the orange juice as well. If we don't have enough there, then we really tend to struggle. There's a really important role that the potassium plays in everything. And when we're losing magnesium due to stress, we're often hand in hand with that is we don't hold on to the potassium quite as effectively, and our kidneys might be pumping more of it out. Again, as a part of the coping mechanism, as a part of the way that our bodies respond to stress, we often need a little bit more support there. So focusing on where you can get potassium from diet is another great thing. But keeping in mind, that doesn't mean eat lots of bananas necessarily. You don't necessarily need to eat lots of sugar, like banana, fruit, sugar. Hey, I have one most days. I'm totally guilty of that. But eating 5 bananas is not the solution to getting more potassium in your body. Go for a diverse diet. Get some greens, leafy greens, get some coconut water is something a lot of people like. But try and look back at a couple of generations and see what foods from your parents and grandparents and beyond, what foods would they have been eating, and see if you can do your best to try as many different things from that. And you'll be surprised how much of a difference that makes.
Oh, interesting.
Ancestral eating, because they wouldn't have had the additives. They would have seasoned with salt, with spices, with herbs and that sort of thing, and probably grown most of it themselves or within their community. So the more that we can get back to basics, it's not about you must do this diet, keto or paleo or whatever. And those who choose to, fine. But the more we obsess over the foods that we eat, it actually puts more stress on our body. So aiming for whole foods wherever we can, keeping it simple, trying different things, see what your body feels really good with. Doesn't have to be adding to your stress.
Yeah, and that's what I'm finding a lot. Like when I was in the medical field, there was so many people that were so stressed out, and you could just tell that there was major things going on in their body. You could just tell because, they're in that flight mode or even fight mode the whole time, that they don't understand. It's like, wow.
Because we have had these.
It's 5:30 at night. No.
It's not night. It's day.
It's 5:30 in the afternoon. No. This is one of those times with packets being involved because mummy and daddy are distracted.
Can we? What else can we do?
Fruit.
Fruit's good.
Get someone to go cut you up an apple, please.
Banana.
Well, banana is great. Put them up.
And then what can we have?
Dinner.
But dinner is my sushi. Salmon.
Well, and dinner will be coming in a little while. Just going to waste away.
I interrupted you again.
No problem. Thank you. I don't know if that came through, but I'm sorry that I interrupted you again.
That's all right. This is what I love about the casual conversation. It's so good. And so actually talking about the adrenal cocktail, I'm going back to cream of tartar and now talking about visibility.
Yes.
So, yes. So for those that are not aware, beautiful Kristan had a post that went viral. Now, we're not talking about, a couple thousand. We're actually talking now in how many million is it?
Well, it's been sitting at 7.6 million for 2 months, and the number of shares have gone up from 88,000 shares to 92 or 93,000 shares. So
wow.
Based on what it used to change, it would probably be 8 to 8.5 million by now, but unfortunately Facebook's not updating the stats anymore. So they got sick of updating it a year on, apparently.
So yeah, just to put some context behind it, what Kristan had was actually just a cream of tartar in her hand, and of course it looks like something else. So
quick way to get people's attention, make it look like illicit drugs, basically.
Yeah. So how did you actually cope with that going viral?
Oh my goodness, it was so stressful. You don't realize until you're living it just how crazy it is to have something take off like that, because you get the haters and you get the, oh my goodness, and you're getting a lot of, I didn't get that many inquiries for people to book in with me necessarily or anything like that sort of thing immediately. That's sort of been a drip feed later on. But initially, I can't describe just how, because it was released on the Wednesday because we had it scheduled up. I'd have forgotten that it was even scheduled up, to be honest. And then by the Friday morning, I remember looking at the stats and we were watching it. We'd noticed that it was getting a lot of interactions. By the Friday morning, it was at 12,000 and we've gone, oh my goodness, this might actually, go viral. And I was screenshotting every few hours and it was just going up and up. By the Monday, it was over 1 million people had seen it. That's how fast it began. It was just mind blowing. But on the Saturday, I was completely attacked. I had people absolutely telling me that I was going to kill someone by making the recommendation and a number of other things. And it just absolutely blew my mind with how that could be, that people would say that, again, because they don't know me. They've just come across this thing and the particular people had medical background and their perception was I was going to kill someone. And I'm like, well, then you feel the need to defend yourself. And then I was absolutely triggered. By the Saturday night, I remember having a shower and just relenting and just going, I'm going to leave it to the universe to deal with this one person in particular who really upset me and was so accusatory and like reporting me to the authorities type things. And what qualifications have you got? And anyway, I put it to the universe and I said, right, someone else can deal with this because I'm checking out. I literally was so upset by it.
Yeah.
By the Sunday morning, someone else had gone in and called, I wouldn't say called her bluff. I said, well, I've got qualifications too, and there's nothing wrong with this. Like, it's a small amount of potassium. It's not going to, if someone's already at a point where they're going to have a cardiac issue or something else by having literally maybe 50 milligrams maximum of potassium under their tongue, they were already in a really, really unwell position and anything could have triggered that. And that's what I had to surrender in. And I tell you what, I didn't really want to be visible for the next couple of months. I struggled with how to present myself. I wasn't ready for it on so many levels. And so it was a massive period of growth for me to become comfortable in sharing it more, because again, it kept going within 2 weeks or less, maybe even by the time it was 1 week in, it was at 2 million or nearly at 2 million. It just kept going at that really steep growing period. And then I think it was around January or February this year, it got reshared. Someone tagged me somewhere and I shared it again in, I think, one of the big groups that I'm in, and it went again. And it just crept up from 4 million to 6.5 within a really short amount of time. And I was like, oh, here we go again. And it's really easy when, again, you're shoved into that limelight to go, oh, and to want to pull back. But because I'd gone through that journey last year, I actually was able to just approach it in such a different way. And, as expected, the haters come along and want to say that you're going to cause someone injury. And again, because they'll go to Google because they want to pay out on someone that shared something on the internet. So they go to Google and funny, copycat syndrome is real. So within a short period of my post, some people in the US actually copied it and theirs went even more viral than mine, which I'm like, it's really uncool to actually, FYI, everybody, don't share, recreate a post that looks like it's doing really well and present it as your own, because it's not cool. Yeah. Anyway, theirs got onto Snoop's. They used their thing and put it onto Snoop's, and I'm like, well, I'm quite okay with them being in the public eye for that one. But again, when it revisited earlier this year, I was just so much better armed to be able to have those discussions and to politely and respectfully, people don't have to try it. If they're worried about their health, they don't have to try it. Absolutely. And they don't have to do it just because they read it. It's up to them.
It's it's really interesting because being in the medical field, the amount of potassium I've given to somebody is like 10 times what that crematada would.
Well, and this is the interesting thing. When I had this revisiting of the situation, actually towards the tail end of the first viral thing, I got into a discussion with a nurse. So I'd had the first interaction, which was with not a GP, but a medical practitioner. And then actually was within a couple of weeks, I think, a nurse in a completely different area that didn't know about my viral post had a go at something for the amount of, it might have been for the adrenal cocktail. Oh, that's got a lot of potassium. It's 400 milligrams of potassium, or 375 in each adrenal cocktail. Our RDI is like literally 4,500-ish milligrams per day. So having a couple of those plus our general diet is unlikely to actually get most people to the recommended daily amount of potassium anyway. It's actually quite challenging to get there. And by this time I was very well aware, even when I shared the post, I was well aware for that. But I guess I, again, was starting to become more comfortable because I'd already had this one discussion. I'm like, no, calm the fight or flight, talking of fight or flight. I tell you what, I was having some extra magnesium and adrenal cocktails during all of this time. And I said to her, well, tell me about what you do with potassium. And she was saying, oh yeah, well, we deliver this. It was like 1,500 to 3,000 milligrams. And I'm like, hang on a minute. So when you give an IV bag, you know, depending on, I can't think of the names. I'm having a mental blank. I'm sure you'd be able to correct me. It's not a unit. It's a
millimoles of litre or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's a particular milli equals, or, you know, it's some sort of a unit. And she said, oh, it's like 10 or 15 of whatever that thing was. And I'm like, okay, so how much in milligrams is that? Oh, it's between 1,500 and 3,000 milligrams. And I said, in one go, in an IV line via a cannula versus under the tongue or ingesting it, where not everything is necessarily going to be absorbed. You can imagine that discussion really quickly fizzled out, and suddenly she's going, okay, maybe it's not. So then that armed me with feeling a little bit more confident and able to discuss it. So that then definitely did come up multiple times, but in one particular discussion only probably 2 or 3 months ago. And again, I was able to have a discussion with the person, and you know what, if anyone, I'm open to being wrong. I've learnt that. I'm absolutely totally happy with that. But in this situation, all the research I've done, some people don't respond well to cream tartar because some people just, it's a byproduct of the wine industry. So there's always a possibility, depending on the source, that there could be other things in it and that sort of thing. But the vast majority of people are fine with it. And it's a reaction to the product. It's not actually a reaction to the potassium necessarily. So anyway, it's been a huge learning curve on the visibility side of things and on my fear response and how I interact with people. And I was a bit scared to share the post because I'm like, what if it takes off again? And most people would go, oh my goodness, you've got a viral post. That's just amazing. Don't you want to just, no, I'm quite okay with that. So clearly I'm not worried about it anymore. It was August when we had the 1 year anniversary, and early August it was that 7.6 million. And like I said, it hasn't changed since then, but I'm pretty sure it's way ahead of that. And I love seeing people come back and say, hey, that helped me. Or did you know, this is something I learned along the way, that cream of tartar used much the same way, or even put some in a glass of water and drink it, can help get rid of cravings when people are quitting smoking.
Oh, really?
You don't know how many times people have shared that they've used it. Like, this is not someone just proposing it, that, oh yeah, that helped me to stop smoking.
Wow.
I mean, I could go into all sorts of interesting discussions on why addictions and minerals are so intrinsically linked. So it doesn't really surprise me knowing that some extra potassium would help to break that sort of addiction phase, and especially if they're doing other things to be supported. But if their body has some of these extra nutrients, it can really help. So who knew?
Wow. So with visibility, what tools have you got now so that if that ever happens again, like another post goes viral, what can you do to support yourself?
Lots of magnesium. I have a really good support team behind the scenes, and so I can bounce things if I'm seeing something that I'm not quite sure on, or need a bit of emotional support or moral support or like physical. Because one of the things that I didn't realize is the number of little ding, 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 like the notification factor. I couldn't keep up with anything in my business because of the number of notifications. So we turned it off. But the thing is, because of the comments that were coming, I had to keep checking it really regularly because of the sheer volume of comments that we were getting. And so it became really time intensive. So having a network of people to help was really, really worthwhile. And so I've got that, and we've really honed that in since. So
yeah, because I remember when it first went viral, because I think I seen you on the Friday. I think we actually had the Lady Boss meet up on that Friday, and it was like, oh my God, what's going on? Like I could tell right away, like we all could. We're like, what's going on? Like we just knew something was happening.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was pretty somber that day.
You were. That's why
we're
we
not in a happy. You think that it's going to be all sunshine and lollipops when something like that happens, but honestly, it takes a little bit of practice on and having a support network, be able to even just share your venting and your insecurities, because they'll all come shining on up really quickly. Am I qualified to be discussing this? Should I be the person that's, you know, and at times, should I delete comments? And I don't like deleting comments, actually. I really prefer to leave the good and the bad, because I'd rather people see a balanced discussion and respectful discussion around it. So there are very few things that were ever deleted, but there are techniques like don't engage. I recommend if there's stuff going on, don't engage. It's just, people are entitled to their opinion. If they're abusive, then clearly do something about it. But if it's just being tit for tat or, you know, trying to get a bite, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, that's one thing I've had to learn since being in business and really being on Facebook is when do I comment and when don't I comment? Like,
if you're asking yourself that question,
don't comment.
It's a good sign of don't comment. Or you may do it, and this is more off that post, and in general, you might do it because you're feeling in a really playful mood, but be aware that it can still drag you down exactly the same.
Exactly. Yeah, you can go down that tunnel. It's amazing. Like there was just the other day, because I do business tarot readings on my page, and there was a business tarot reading from like a year ago that someone had seen and got really angry at me because I didn't do a reading for them. It's like, that was like a year ago. I can't quite time travel. So it's understanding that these things can happen. So people, for some reason, might come across a post that is actually old and might actually, you know, end up abusing you. And you've just got to realise that, hang on, as you said, something could be going on for them. So you've just got to take a step back and go, well, hang on.
I recently had another sort of situation whereby I was being told that I shouldn't be charging for what I do. That was a very interesting discussion, and it was I'm pretty sure he had been sent a link by someone, or that there'd been, I don't even have autoresponders on my page, but there was something that had, and he just took it as, well, why should I pay you anything? And I hadn't sent him a link to say book into anything. I actually suspect he was sent an invitation to like the page because he had liked something on one of my posts. And that for whatever reason, when he went to my page, the first thing he saw was book in rather than like the page. So again, you don't know where they're at. They may not be so technology literate or any number of things. And I guess this is a big lesson for me, and it ties in with visibility to an extent. We are in a different place to where other people that we interact with may be, and it's generally not about us. And we can make it about us, or we can just say, oh, I'm really sorry that you feel that way, and acknowledge, well, you know, for that situation, I said, well, I help people. I provide constant free content, and people can go and self-empower and do what they want to do. If they'd like to book in with me, well, then I get paid for my time like any other professional. So and I didn't take too much to heart. I was really confused. And then when he replied to other people who saw it and replied to it, he got a bit, I didn't, you know, I haven't done this and I haven't, and then it started to come out, and I'm pretty sure it was more heavily around his technology awareness. So that's what it is.
And that's the interesting thing, is there is a lot of stuff out there, like me doing what I'm doing, you know, visibility. There's a lot of stuff out there, but there are so many times that we need that one person to guide us, support us, hold us accountable to actually do that. And why not pay that person? They have done so much work to get where they are that they deserve to be paid.
And this raises another thing as far as the visibility and the learning, right? when we face these situations, one of the best things that I learned through that whole viral post situation, as well as the different parts of my business, what am I here to learn in this experience? What did the viral post teach me? That actually I can cope with a lot of stress. I can cope with an increased sudden workload, and with people saying these things at me, both the not so nice things and the supportive things. It's nice to be complimented and have people come back and go, oh my goodness, that helped and made such a difference. But every time I'm getting speed wobbles, whether it's visibility or other aspects to balancing within my business, what can I learn from this? Take a step back for a minute, and it just makes such a big difference.
Yeah, it does. And also having those minerals there as well, they're a great support. Because when you've got all those beautiful minerals, your brain could be doing stuff, but at the same time you're going, I'm good.
I'm pretty sure that most people would be able to resonate with the concept that when they hit a stressful situation, the brain fog kicks in, the confusion, I don't know how to make a decision in this, I don't know how to cope, and that overwhelm hits, and the escalation, like the catastrophizing and all of that. And that's another huge change that I've had over the last few years of balancing my minerals to the point where I am now, is that I can cope with so much more stress. I could never have dealt with the stress of really the last 18 months, because there's been a lot going on in our lives, both business-wise and outside it. There's no chance that I would have come out of it feeling as fit and healthy as I ever have been. I've probably am healthier now than I've literally been as an adult ever, and even as a child. We just made winter with one sniffle that lasted about 2 days in May, no sickness, and there's people with the flu all around us, there's people with gastro, all of that sort of thing, and we got absolutely zero of it, even though both hubby and I had some of the biggest stress that we've ever experienced as adults in the last few months. So that capacity to manage it and not go straight into a panic mode, I mean, that's learned. You don't just suddenly magically have minerals and then you can deal with stress. I've done a lot of personal development work in the last, especially 2 years, with how I acknowledge a stressful situation and how I choose to respond, rather than letting my primal brain kick in and do what I would historically have done. But at the same time, I just don't get the physical response anywhere near what I used to. So.
Wow. Oh, geez, we've been going for nearly an hour.
Imagine us talking for an hour. We joked about that from the very beginning.
We did, didn't we? I better let you go. So it has been absolutely awesome talking to you. I've really learned so much tonight. It's been absolutely brilliant. And for anyone that wants to know, in the description, I've actually got links to all of Kristan's stuff, her website and everything as well. So yeah, thank you again. And I'm holding a webinar on Tuesday, because the electricity company decided to turn my power off when I was meant to be holding it on Wednesday. Silly people. So I've changed it to Tuesday, and I've actually got the link to that. So I actually help people with visibility, and it's actually going through, like, I'm focusing just on their chakras and how to become visible. And the great thing is that I help people become visible without needing to get on camera. But I wanted to do this because I wanted people to get comfortable being on camera as well, because it's so much fun.
Pretty much. How awesome is it to have a conversation with people? And certainly when I started getting ready for my first big event, it's a bit scary. It's nearly 2 years ago now. It was around this time that I had a conversation with Claire Barton to going for my first RCP World Tour.
Yes.
And starting to do things like Facebook Live. She's like, yeah, it'll be worth you doing Facebook Lives. I'm like, okay. And so since then, but I really enjoy it. Like when we were talking last week, I was saying, well, I like to have conversations like this. It's much nicer than just talking to myself.
It is.
But it's just, it's a nice, so if people haven't done it, give it a go. Go on with a plan. Enjoy having a chat, have someone to chat to while you're getting started. That can make a big, big difference. And even without, just go to Darlene's webinar first, learn about it, then start to put it into practice too.
Yeah, but that's one reason why I did start these casual chats, because I wanted people who hadn't actually even done a Facebook Live to actually get on camera and be comfortable, because this is done on Zoom and shared to Facebook. So it's not actually like getting on Facebook and being like live. We're still live, but it's different.
Yep, absolutely.
Right. Cool. Well, thank you again. This has been awesome.
Absolutely fine. I've enjoyed it too, and we've got a few little comments of people that have been watching us. So thank you. And thank you, Nicole, for your lovely comment. Although it's disappeared now. Few little comments of people that have been watching us. And look,
mute. I did that before.
I am a professional.
Are we?
So yeah, if anyone has any questions about anything that we've talked about, who comes across this replay later or who's been playing along live, just please comment in. I'll keep an eye out, and I'm sure Darlene will tag me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's great because these videos, the last couple I've done, I've gotten up to like, I think even like 100 views or something. It's so cool. But because you're quite famous, it might get a lot more.
Maybe might even get shared on my page. Although now that we've been talking about the viral thing, visibility issues. Any visibility? No. It's good for people, and this is one of the things you raised when we were talking through things again when we first chatted about this angle. Is I'm quite happy for people to see the real me, to really get more of an insight into me. When you're commenting on something and you're having a go at someone, remember that there is a person there. And what a lot of the viral post thing comes down to is people forget that when you're typing on a keyboard, especially if you're in a rush and things like that, that sometimes you just forget that a quick little comment trying to be either a smart ass or trying to make a point can actually be pretty upsetting to someone else. And if you word it in a slightly different way, it can make such a big difference. So be kind. We're all humans.
That's so true. And what I do is I take 3 deep breaths first, then I look back at the post again and I go, yeah, no. Most of the time I just go, no. Because you don't need to comment. Just, all you need to do most of the time is just put a love or a like or something, or like some people have done is put love hearts on. You don't need to get in there and make some comments. And especially if you don't know any of the circumstances or anything like that at all. I mean, how many people post on something and, then they realise that they've actually, okay.
Yep.
Yep.
So, share the love.
Yep. So, as Kristan said, be kind, people.
It goes a long way. And
it does, doesn't it?
The number of times I comment when, again, I'm in a very, very large Facebook group that's nearly 180,000 people, and I moderate and administer it as well. And sometimes you've got to take a step back and either not reply, as what we were talking about before, or just take a step back enough to go, hang on, could you explain a little more? And the person gives a bit more context and you can actually help them. So if you're interested enough to be reading it and to think, oh, why are they saying that? Maybe give them the time of day and ask them to explain their situation. Maybe they've been triggered or whatever, but it's remarkable how letting someone be heard can make a big difference too. So
totally. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you again. It's getting dark where you are.
Yeah, I know. And I don't have a light in. This is the crazy thing with this house. The design of it is they never put a light in the room. There's a switch on the wall and there's literally no light. So I rely heavily on screens, and I have. So now I just get completely spooky looking. Oh, there we go. That's so you get to shine on my slightly messy office. Again, visibility, I don't have issues with that.
That's why I've got one of these things that hides everything.
The room wasn't really narrow. It's a work in progress. I'm considering how to do that too. You can see my lovely horsey picture.
No, I know, isn't it gorgeous? And I love that cabinet. I've always loved those kind of cabinets.
I'm very grateful that my mother has gifted us this. My husband and I always eyed it off. We used to live in her house. We're like, oh, because it's a real timber. It's handmade type quality. We've had it in the family for since I was little. So it'd have to be probably 30 years. So it's, it's not like it's a really antique or anything, but it's just so well made. But it's also really, really heavy. And as a result, and we're in a 2-story house, so it kind of had to be downstairs. It worked well in my favor.
Beautiful. Right. Oh, yes, well, I better let you go because otherwise the kids might be.
Thankfully, my husband came inside. He was working outside and it got a bit dark for him. So hopefully he's feeding the hungry hordes who are wasting away to nothing because the dog ate their food.
I know, you're making me hungry now. I might waste away.
Well, thank you for inviting me on, Darlene.
You're welcome.
Lovely. And
yeah, thank you.
If I wasn't running my own webinar on Tuesday, I would probably be at yours, but I'll just for the
I didn't even know you were running one.
Yes, I'm running one on Tuesday as well, Tuesday afternoon.
Oh, well, mine's in the morning.
Oh, there you go. I can do both if I'm not finishing off the presentation.
I know. I'm actually amazed at myself. I've actually got the slides done and I've actually written out all the stuff. It's like, I've done what?
I've done a big chunk of mine, which I'm really proud of, but it's also a long weekend here, so I knew that I really had to make an effort yesterday to get a good majority of it done as well. And Tuesday is the first day back of school for my kids for term 4, so there's a few compounding issues.
So besides the adrenal cocktail, can you put a link to sign up for your webinar in there as well, please? I didn't know about that.
Well, so there's one on Tuesday and then the following Monday. I've actually put them on 2 different times because they're the similar times to what the course is going to run, so that people that may like to join the course may can see, but mainly because my audience is worldwide. So in the mornings I tend to work with people that are in Australia and the US, and then in the afternoon and sort of early evening time slot I tend to be working with those in Europe and the UK, as well as some Australians as well. So I've decided to cover, by having the 2 webinars on the same topic, it gives everyone a good opportunity to join in. Yeah,
and this actually really points out visibility beautifully. Like, I know you really well. I know, all the stuff about you, and I didn't know you're holding a webinar.
And it's been shared a bit in places where we have in common, although it was like Thursday. It's very recent, or Wednesday. Very recent that it's been shared, but still.
Yeah, no, because of Claire and that, I've learnt well about launching, so mine's been everywhere.
Yeah, I'm still kind of visibility. Again, I'm great with visibility. It's not organised. There's been a few other things behind the scenes that have not quite been going to plan, so I'll take the wins while I've got them. But the benefit of having 2 webinars is also that people can also sign up for the second one if they miss the first one because they didn't know about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But there is only me. I've only got me to look after, so I've got no excuse. Cool. Anyway, we better stop talking.
We would never do this like protracted kind of preparation, would we? Thank you to all who are. We've got 3 people who are still watching us, I believe. So thank you to those who are around. Feel free to say something if you've got any questions or anything. Don't be afraid to invite. Probably just going, oh my goodness, are they ever going to stop?
No.
If we have any choice in it.
Yes, I'll just hit that end button then. Cool. Right. Thank you. No worries.
Talk to you soon.
Goodbye.